Well, I'm really excited to be able to share with you an opportunity to learn more about Habitat for Humanity's Home Equals Global Advocacy Campaign. And I am really privileged to be joined by Becky Ochong, who is the Associate Director of Global Affairs and Advocacy with Habitat for Humanity International, and someone that I just had the opportunity to meet in Washington at Habitat on the Hill a few months back, and just really excited to learn more about the work that Habitat is doing around the world, and especially with tithe partners that Milwaukee Habitat has in Zambia and El Salvador. And so, Becky, thanks so much, first of all, for joining us. And maybe you could start by just sharing a little bit more of an overview of what Home Equals as a global advocacy campaign, what it's all about.
Yeah, thank you, Brian, and thank you for inviting me. I'm really excited, to be talking about the Home Equals campaign. That's really a new global advocacy campaign that Habitat for Humanity just launched on the 16th of May. So very exciting. It was launched ahead of the G7 summit in Japan. Now, the Home Equals campaign is a new 5-year global advocacy campaign where we as Habitat have committed to achieving policy and systems change at all levels of government to ensure that people living in informal settlements have equitable access to housing, adequate housing. Now, just to add that, I mean, much of the Habitat network is already doing advocacy, and the campaign, and as well as other campaigns that Habitat has run before. We have the Coast of Home that's ongoing in the US now. Previously, we had the Solid Ground campaign that focused on increasing access to land for shelter. Normally really positions us for a global network-wide and coordinated set of strategies and activities within an aligned policy framework, which means we are also coalescing around certain issues. And now this is a global umbrella campaign, as you will, which we feel is really necessary to allow for local flexibility. So you'll find that the way it is implemented in Zambia, for example, will be different from the way it's implemented in El Salvador and in Poland and so on. So it allows for that flexibility, but at the same time, we also have the overarching connected structure that really helps to guide us and bound our activities. Habitat being, present in more than 70 countries, gives us a very unique position. Habitat is a global housing leader, so that it helps us to really push for prioritizing of housing, not just in the US, but also globally. Now, in terms of the issue that we're dealing with, we have currently, the UN estimates that about 1 billion people, I mean, a staggering 1 billion people around the world currently live in slums and other informal settlements. And this figure is expected to rise, if nothing is done, to maybe up to 3 million by 2050. Now, as you may know, some of you might already know, informal settlements are characterized by limited access to basic services such as clean water, sanitation, electricity, really basic. Then informal settlements also, people who live there often lack secure tenure, so they lack the property rights, so often under threat of constant eviction. Again, the physical infrastructure is not there, their housing is in poor conditions and so on. So these are some of the issues that the campaign seeks to address. And the way we have designed, you had me mention that we have this overarching frame, so that really guides the thematic focus of the campaign. So we have 4 sub-themes for the campaign. So the 4 sub-themes is, first one is empowered participation. So the empowered participation piece, recognizes the fact that people living in informal settlements are often not included in decision-making processes that affects them. So we are working to ensure that, we have in place systems and policies and processes that ensure that we incorporate their priorities, needs, experiences, because, they live there, they know the issues better, than anyone else. The other theme is access to basic services, reliable and sustainable basic services. As I mentioned again, basic services is always an issue. They don't have water, they don't have sanitation and so on. So that's one key area that will focus. The other area that we're focusing on is around climate resilience or adaptation. Most informal settlements, they're usually on the peripheries, the most undesirable places of the cities. So often in hazard-prone areas, disaster-prone. So how do we make them, more resilient, more so that they can adapt better, to issues around climate change and so on, to flooding that happens. The other fourth piece is tenure security. Again, how do we ensure that they are free from eviction, that they can live, because at the end of the day, everyone deserves a place to live. So if they're always living under constant threat of eviction, then of course they could not be, they cannot live peacefully. So those really four key areas are the ones that we are really focusing on. And then something really exciting, the Habitat Network right now is very much on board. So far, we've had almost 14 entities globally, enrolled in the campaign, doing different things, amazing things, whether it's direct engagement with policymakers, developing policy solutions, working in coalitions, mobilizing advocates, doing communications, fundraising, and so on. So a lot is already going on, and we are really, really excited about, what's going on. And then something else that we have learned through the previous campaigns, the cost of home and solid ground, is the real value of dedicated financial investments to our global network for policy and advocacy. And to that, I really want to call out the support that we've had from Habitat affiliates through Tithe. So many have tithed, to help to kind of support investment in the networks through grants. We've had pilot grants, challenge grants, reactive grants that we've been able to give out to the networks to support, ongoing advocacy activities or new advocacy activities that are aligned with the policy focus of the campaign. So we launched pilot grants last year in June, ran for a 7-month period. This was awarded to 8 Habitat entities, and you'll be happy to note that Habitat El Salvador was one of those entities that was awarded a pilot grant. And then most recently, we gave out launch grants to about 4 or 5 Habitat entities to support in the launch activities to help, disseminate information about the launch. Then about 2 months ago, we had launched the challenge grants, which was issued to 14 Habitat entities around the world. And, this time it's very interesting. I think it's for the first time. Before, we would only give out grants for purely advocacy. But this particular time, through, again, Tithe, through the Tithe Transformation Fund, I think it's a special fund that was set up for the Mackenzie's Court, the affiliates that received, the gift from Mackenzie's Court, where they're tithing part of that to support the campaign. And that was mainly to support demonstration projects or programmatic work. So in this particular context, the Tithe Tithe Transformation Fund that we have received has enabled us to not only support advocacy efforts, but aligned programmatic work. So such that if you're advocating, say, for water and sanitation, then you can have a demonstration project, like, if you provide water and sanitation, so somebody sees tangibly that this is actually happening. So we are really excited, and that is going on. Both Habitat El Salvador and Habitat Zambia have received challenge grants on, and I'll be talking about that later on, hopefully, to tell you more about, what they're focusing on. And then we're also giving out reactionary grants, to different Habitat entities, to really be able to push forward issues related to the campaign that are reactive, because one of the things we know is advocacy, sometimes some things are planned, but sometimes, an opportunity comes and you have to act immediately. And we've been able to see great, advocacy wins. So some of these advocacy reactive grants, for example, we provided both pilot and reactive grants to Habitat Malawi. They were able to resuscitate or bring forward a disaster risk management bill that had been sitting in the shelves. Nothing was happening. They're able to bring it and, mobilize Parliament, mobilize the Ministry of Justice and other, civil society organizations. It was presented in Parliament just over a month ago. and it was approved. It was amazing to see, and they followed the whole process. They had a video of the actual debate in Parliament, which they shared with us. It's amazing. As we speak now, it's waiting presidential approval. So really small investment, maybe of about $20,000, but very huge impact. So a lot of exciting things that are going on with the campaign. Then maybe, just finally to add on to, I think it's really exciting, everything around the campaign. Something also very different that we are doing now with this campaign, as you heard, that it was launched ahead of the G7 summit. This time we are, apart from what we are doing at country level, we have also, the network also pushed us to identify a global target. So this is a global entity that can really, we can help, influence to rally around, at the same time to ensure that, make, certain, to kind of make some commitments around addressing issues of informal settlement. So the global target, after a whole process of evaluating various organizations, the World Bank, the EU, USA, the UN, and so on. So we landed on the G7. The G7 is a group of 7 countries, including the US, Germany, France, Great Britain, Japan, and Italy, that really oftentimes set the agenda around development, internationally around the world. So we have started that process. We are working on a strategy to ensure that we engaged in that whole process. So exciting times to come. And so hopefully, I think I'll be touching on that later, different ways to engage. There's going to be a G7 summit in the US, I think in 2024, 2025. I need to remember, just confirm the date, but hopefully maybe at that time, helping to, share, elevate issues around, informal settlements to ensure that, it gets heard and potentially, hopefully, included in some of the agenda discussed. So I will end there and maybe looking forward to your next question.
Well, that's fantastic, Becky. Really a great overview of a really robust campaign. And I think a couple of things really stood out to me. One is the immense need, right? A billion plus people living in informal settlements. And as you said, the risk, if nothing is done, if the right initiatives aren't implemented, to see that number go as high as 3 billion in 25 plus years is something that I'm so grateful that for all the hard work from yourself and others, and certainly our partners around the world in addressing this great need. And then the other thing that really stood out to me is just you just said, our national organizations with Habitat across the world have been engaged in advocacy well before the launch of this campaign. Things did not start in May. In many ways, we at Milwaukee Habitat, with our 2 tithe partners in Zambia and El Salvador, know that and have learned ourselves so much from their campaigns and their work. It is both inspiring, it is educational, and it really has been helpful to see and exciting to see the work that they have been doing for years, culminating and continuing to move forward with the Home Equals campaign. So Becky, as you look at the number of countries and the local solutions being different, how do you measure success? This is a 5-year campaign, and it has these 4 themes that are overarching. So how do you measure success? What will that look like 5 years from now if we are successful? And I say we because this is a one Habitat approach. And so as the listeners are thinking about this immense problem and this campaign, what does success look like for you?
Yeah, thank you, Brian, for that question. Yeah. Now, as Habitats, we have this vision of a world where everyone has a decent place to live, which means we really have a responsibility to take action. Now, the Home Equals campaign allows us to scale our influence and then also achieve greater impact, and through different ways. For the campaign, what we have done is we've developed a very elaborate monitoring and evaluation plan with real metrics that helps us to track our progress for the campaign goal. And our goal is that by the end of the 5-year campaign, we aim that 15 million people living in informal settlements have increased equitable access to adequate housing. Apart from that, we are also, tracking the broader, contributions to the broader, external target worldwide, that's as provided in the, Sustainable Development Goals, particularly Sustainable Development Goal number 11, which is focused on sustainable cities. This is where we have a target, there's a specific target, which, globally all countries have assigned to ensure that access to all to adequate, safe and affordable housing, basic services and the upgrade of slums. So that is something we are very closely monitoring, working closely with the main UN agency that's monitoring, that is UN Habitat. So, so it's something that we, apart from this campaign, we are also engaging in other broader conversations around slum upgrading. So hopefully, that helps to kind of multiply, our impact.
Mm-hmm. Great. So you mentioned, the ways that Habitat El Salvador and Habitat Zambia have already been engaged, and maybe you can just touch a little bit more specifically on the types of things that each of those countries have been doing, even in the early stages of Home Equals, and just how you see them utilizing this campaign and the work that they do.
Yeah, thank you so much. And you rightly said, both El Salvador and Zambia have done amazing work around advocacy, and this campaign is really helping them build onto that now. As I mentioned, Habitat El Salvador received a pilot grant, actually both a pilot grant and a challenge grant. Now, the pilot grant, which they received last year, really enabled them to conduct community diagnosis in the Rosario de Mora municipality, as they wanted to learn more about some of the main barriers that families that live in informal settlements face as they seek to access decent housing and secure tenure. Now, they had previously worked with the mayor's office in that municipality on various issues focused on low income housing. And at that time, they were able to secure investment of about $130,000 to support 70 families to access adequate housing and training on various issues such as financial education, risk management, and so on. Now, despite that work, they didn't really have, proper detail, no studies had been conducted to really understand what was taking place there, some of the key challenges. So the pilot grant really helped them to understand that. And now with the challenge grant, they're building on that. So they're implementing, some of the, the issues, the things that they found out through this study. So now they're using that to develop both an advocacy and communication strategy so that they can work better. They are also, working in partnerships with others. They have a very ambitious goal. Their grant, they want to implement it over a 24-month period to include mapping of the communities, mapping the threats and vulnerabilities that they find there. They would want to have another MOU with the mayor's office, to effect municipal level policy changes, and so on. And then they're also working in the informal settlements to improve the living conditions in general by addressing water, sanitation, hygiene through the installation of about 90 water tanks. They're also working towards solutions around climate resilience, repairing roofs and so on, and training. So a lot that is going on there. In Zambia, they received a challenge grant, and they want to use this to strengthen the existing advocacy efforts around women's land and housing rights, as well as oversee their water, sanitation, and hygiene efforts in the Mukulu slum area. So they are working to amplify the voices, so a very strong empowered participation piece within their, the work that they're going to do. And then, as they do that work, they also hold kind of convenings with communities to learn more and share some of those insights, with their through their parliamentary engagements, their National Housing Forum engagements, and so on. And then at the programmatic level, they are also working around bringing in what they're calling water chlorinators. So again, a huge part of that is around providing, clean water and sanitation services, clearing the drainages, putting in place community boreholes and so on. So really a lot of exciting work that they're doing, addressing tenure, addressing water and sanitation and so on. So yeah, a lot of exciting things going on in the ground already with the campaign.
Yeah. Thanks, Becky. It's so helpful to get a fuller understanding, and those from Milwaukee Habitat that have had an opportunity to visit these countries, they see it firsthand, they get a better sense. But for many who haven't visited, haven't had that opportunity yet to go on a global village trip and see the work that El Salvador and Zambia is doing, it is amazing. The holistic nature of the work that they do, and especially in the area of advocacy to create system level changes, is really inspiring. As we wrap up, Becky, it's an opportunity to just share a little bit as to how U.S. affiliates can connect to this work that's happening globally. We're doing work here locally in our various local communities. We're advocating through the Cost of Home campaign locally and nationally here in the United States. But how can we impact things, thousands of miles away and really see some of these great goals be reached?
Yeah, thank you again, Brian. So we'd really love, support from the U.S. affiliates, and really thank you for that question. I think the first one is really about raising awareness on the issues so that we can build support around the campaign. And this can be through various ways, whether it's through social media, engaging our supporters. We've developed social media collaterals that we can, we'll be happy to share, with affiliates. I think some were also shared. I think have been shared maybe through the insider brief that I think goes out for the Cost of Home participants. I think those who participate in the Cost of Home, we also have an insider kind of an update newsletter that goes out from the Home Equals campaign, where we'll be sharing those. So we'd really appreciate that, that kind of support. The other one is through Tithe. We've had, as I mentioned before, we've already had quite a bit of support, from various affiliates who have tithed, to the campaign and in different ways, for the challenge grants or just to support the broader, the campaign, because there's a lot also going on in terms of what we did at the groundwork, but then also just, monitoring and managing the campaign. So, so I think a lot of that, and then just something that I also wanted to highlight, really linked to what I talked about, helping to promote the campaign. As part of the campaign, we've developed an amazing, report, which is titled "Improving Housing in Informal Settlements: Assessing the Impacts of Human Development." And this particular report is focusing on the hidden value of informal settlements. So it looks at what are we missing, by not addressing informal settlements. So we want to paint a positive picture, not a negative picture, because oftentimes people have looked at informal settlements negatively, but it's like, there's so much opportunity, there's so much innovation going on. Can we bring that out so that then people see that, oh, we are missing this? Findings from the report has been amazing. It has really shown us a lot that, potential benefits that we would have by addressing informal settlements. One would be up to, health, life expectancy increasing by up to 4% around the world, adding about 2.4 years on the average age, up to about 730,000 preventable deaths could be avoided annually, up to 41.6 million children would be able to access school, if we address informal settlements, because then we're able to address other systemic issues there. And I think a staggering one that I saw also was, the impact on the economy, up as much as 10.5% economic growth that would happen to a country if we are able to address, issues around informal settlements. So there's a lot, and through that report is really helping us to come up with messaging, very targeted, with which has been researched, very thoroughly, that maybe affiliates can also help us to share a lot of that information widely. We also have a launch video that was released, and then also case studies, just really highlighting the really innovative things that are already taking place in the informal settlements.
Well, Becky, thanks so much again. We are so privileged to partner with you and this work, and are so excited about the launch of Home Equals and ways that we can be a part of that. And obviously our partners in Zambia and El Salvador, but other national organizations around the world. So thank you so much for joining us today and just sharing your thoughts, your insight. And it's a wonderful opportunity for us at Milwaukee Habitat to really live out the One Habitat model that we're connected in our shared mission to ensure that every man, woman, boy, and girl has a decent place to live. And so thank you so much for your work on this campaign and for joining us this afternoon. Have a great day. Thanks, Becky.
Yeah, thank you so much too, Brian, and you have a great day too.